great to see you all here. Can you hear me down the back all right? Okay. Can you understand the southern accent okay? Good. Now, people ask me all the time, why would I care about America? Well, I say there are two reasons. The first is gratitude. My country was facing invasion during World War II from the Imperial Japanese Army. And if it hadn't been for the massive sacrifice of your fathers and uncles and grandfathers at the battles of Guadalcanal and the Coral Sea and Midway, we would have been done, folks. It's a very strong memory even today. Now, the second reason is related, a little more selfish. Ronald Reagan had it right. This is the last best hope for mankind. People, I'm a coward. If there was a safe place to be right now, I'd already be there. This is the last hope. This is the last stand for liberty here. Where the world goes will be determined by how America goes. Now, has anybody in the room ever had to get a background check or a security clearance for any government or military position? Okay, you're talking a huge number of people in the room. Excellent. Now, is it true those background checks are very rigorous? They look at your family background, they look at criminal convictions, they might interview your youth pastor, your high school teachers. They want to know you're a trustworthy person who will defend the Constitution. Because this country has enemies who will use your weak and dishonest to betray you. And one traitor can cost you a battle. One traitor can cost you your country. Imagine had Benedict Arnold been successful when he tried to betray the revolution. How different your country would have been. Well, now you have thousands of traitors, people, in this country. And they're working overtime to bring you to your knees. See, a lot of you guys have had background checks. Excuse me. It's this Dana bowler. It's just terrible. A lot of guys, you've had background checks. But okay, you stand for Congress. You're a young liberal guy or woman. You stand for Congress. You hang around with the local communists, the local Islamists, someone like Andre Carson, for instance. You get elected to the US Congress, where you may serve on the Homeland Security Committee, the Armed Services Committee, even the Intelligence Committee, as Carson does. How much of a background check do you need for that one, folks? There are nothing. There is no background checks in Congress whatsoever. None. Now, do you think the Iranians may know about this? And the Chinese, and the Turks, and the Saudis, and the Russians, and the North Koreans, and the Cubans. But surely they wouldn't use that against you, would they? People, but don't worry, there's no way that traitors or terrorists or spies could ever get into your Congress or your Senate, because you have a federal agency specifically designed to stop that happening. That is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Do you feel better now? You feel relieved? Well, once you would have. No longer, unfortunately. The fox is guarding the hen house. But the FBI has another problem. They are answerable to the Judiciary Committee, the most powerful committee in your Congress. Now, who remembers John Conyers from not far away from here? You know, John Conyers was in Congress from Michigan for 140 years, I believe it was. Now, that man headed the Judiciary Committee for more than 40 years as a Democrat from Michigan. He would be one of the most treasonous congressmen ever to serve in the US House of Representatives. The man had a 50-year history with the Communist Party USA, 40 years with Democratic Socialists of America, a founder member of that Marxist organization, very heavily involved in the Workers' World Party, which supports North Korea and Cuba and Iran, and a big-time supporter of several Muslim Brotherhood front groups. And if you're not sure who the Muslim Brotherhood are, They started in Egypt in 1929 with the goal of worldwide Islam. They worked with the Nazis in World War II. Then they worked with the Soviet KGB. They are the father of Hamas, Al-Qaeda, and ISIS. But in America, they worked legally through the Council on American Islamic Relations, Muslim Student Association, etc. And when some of your Republican congressmen tried to get the Muslim Brotherhood designated as a terrorist organization, in my movie, I hope you'll get a copy, John Conyers is in Congress. No, we must support the Muslim Brotherhood. They're a peaceful social service agency now. We just should work with them, not against them. John Conyers was a hardcore anti-American Marxist-Leninist, an agent of the Soviet Union for most of his career. Yet he oversaw the FBI and the Justice Department. Also on that committee until recently, you had Judy Chu from California, long-time supporter of the Communist Workers' Party, militant pro-Chinese communist group. She's been described in the Chinese press as China's best friend in your Congress. And sometimes the FBI, to pretend they're doing something, arrest one of the more than 25,000 Chinese spies currently working in this country. But that's too much for Judy Chu. Check her out on C-SPAN. She gets on the FBI's case. You are racist, she says. You're a racist organization. You're only persecuting these people because you hate Asians. And she has arranged for sensitivity training for these cruel FBI agents so they don't persecute these poor Chinese spies any longer. Now, the current head of the committee, you've seen him on TV. He takes up pretty much most of the screen. That is Jerry Nadler from New York. Current head of the Judiciary Committee, long-time member of Democratic Socialists of America, been a member or supporter of that Marxist organization since 1977. So think about this. The FBI and the Justice Department answer to Marxists. They're controlled by Marxists. Now you imagine one day, this is a hypothetical situation. Hypothetical. The FBI wakes up one day and thinks, look, the country's on the verge of destruction. We've been negligent. There's at least 100 members of Congress who are working for the other side, 25 members of the US Senate who couldn't pass a background check to drive a school bus in any county in America. They're running armed services, they're running Homeland Security, they're running virtually every committee in the Congress and the Senate. They're the reason we have a nuclear deal with Iran. They are the reason we are no longer energy independent. They are the reason our military is being gutted. They are the reason for our debacle in Afghanistan. They are the reason our southern borders are wide open and our kids are being indoctrinated in schools. They are the reason our industry has been sold to the Chinese and we tolerate 80,000 dead Americans a year through Chinese fentanyl. They are destroying this country. They are working for our enemies. We better darn well do something while we have a country left. Let's go to the Judiciary Committee. Let's talk to Mrs. Chu and Mr. Nadler. Mrs. Chu, Mr. Nadler, we need to investigate at least 100 of your Democratic colleagues for working against this country, working with our enemies. Do you mind? And by the way, Mrs. Chu, by the way, Mr. Nadler, you're both on the list. Is that okay? What do you think's going to happen to their budget next year, folks? Do you think the FBI is stupid enough to bite the hand that feeds it? Why did the FBI not prosecute Hillary Clinton for her service? When if any of you had done what she did, you would never see the light of day again in your lives. Because she could be the president. She could destroy them. She could get them, take away their pensions, take away their jobs. She could wreck their careers. Do you think the FBI is going to go after their bosses? That is our problem, folks. Once you get to a certain level in the American government now, you're untouchable. You can commit any form of treason. You can do influence peddling for foreign powers, spying and espionage. Eric Swalwell from California, sleeping with a communist Chinese agent who helped to get him elected. He serves on the Intelligence Committee, and Nancy Pelosi, who is also a pro-Chinese communist, won't take him off that committee. As I said, 100 members of your House and 20 members, and check my movie out, I've got them documented, couldn't pass a background check to drive a school bus in this county. They couldn't sell you stamps at the post office. And this goes right through, people, your cabinet, Biden's cabinet. You want to know about the communist background of Joe Biden? Check out my stuff. The little Pete from up South Bend. You know, Secretary of Transport, the one who wants to tax you for every mile you drive. Father was one of the leading communists in America. Pete worked with communists when he was in South Bend, Indiana. He worked with them when he was on the campaign trail. He is a full-on Marxist pretending to be a moderate Democrat. Of the 11 Democrats still running at the beginning of 2020, 10 of them had Marxist backgrounds. Even Mrs. Nice Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota. All of them. The Democratic Party now is a communist party. And parts of the Republican Party, unfortunately, are not far behind. That is our problem. So what do we do, folks? We are in a revolution. We are in a revolution that, if we allow it to continue, will extinguish freedom forever in this country. Does anybody in this room think it's fantastic or an exaggeration for me to say that we are in danger of losing this country? If I'd said that 10 years ago, would you have agreed with me? Some might, but I think most of us now understand this has gone way beyond normal situation. This is not just Republican, Democrat turnaround anymore. This is communists versus constitutionalists. This is good versus evil that we're talking about now. And anybody who talks about how proud they are of bipartisanship, well, I'm not proud of cooperating with the devil. Would you be? No. We are either choosing one side or the other now. That's what we've come down to. One side has got to win. One side has got to win to save this nation. One side has got to win to destroy it. We have to decide which side we're on now. So what do we do, folks? Well, there's a number of steps that we can take, and I'm very proud to have met many of you in my previous tour here. The local things you're doing at school board levels and county commission levels. There is an energy in this state that is incredible. I go all over this country and I see more energy in Indiana than virtually anywhere else I've been to. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of bragging here because I come from Florida, right? And down in Florida, we love Ron DeSantis like a chocolate. Now, we know, I believe, that we need 2, 3, 4 Floridas. And I believe this state is best positioned to be the Florida of the Midwest. The anchor point for the Now, Ron DeSantis has set up a body recently specifically designed to catch vote fraud. It's a felony. You get caught in doing vote fraud in Florida, you'll go to jail. There's a specific body set up to do that. He set up his past legislation that is going to clamp down on the activities of China, Russia, Syria, Iran, Venezuela, and Cuba, and North Korea in our state. He's dealing with those national security issues that he can on a local level. He is protecting the people. He will not enforce mask mandates. He's going after the bad guys in the state like you wouldn't believe, and you don't hear a lot about it because the media doesn't want to give him any oxygen. But before I go on, I just have to say you got to rave about Ron, but I got to say this, in the interest of full disclosure, I have to reveal some relationship here. Because see, Ron DeSantis' family comes from Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. My wife's family comes from Philadelphia. And about 40 years ago, my wife's aunt used to date Ron DeSantis' father's cousin. They're practically family. Okay, so there's a bit of bias there. I've got to put that out there. But I'll tell you, this is one of the key things I think that you need to look at in this state. Now, anybody here love Liz Cheney? Oh, she's a great representative. No, she's not very popular, is she, in the grassroots? But I'll tell you what, sadly, she may well win re-election in Wyoming, even though the Wyoming Republican base despises her. Why? Because Wyoming has open primaries, meaning Democrats can vote in the Republican primary, and they are pouring in to vote for Liz Cheney. They are going to ensure that she gets back in. That is how Lisa Murkowski, the left-wing Republican from Alaska, is still representing that very conservative state. They have open primaries. Your enemies vote for your leaders. In Florida, we had a race between Ron DeSantis and Adam Putnam. Adam Putnam was the favourite of the Rhino wing. He was not a bad guy, but he didn't have the power or energy of Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis was the outsider. He was not the favourite, too conservative. Trump endorsed him to his great credit. Ron DeSantis won that primary against Adam Putnam because Florida has closed primaries and only Republicans could vote in the primary, meaning that Democrats couldn't all come in and vote for Adam Putnam. The message here is real simple, folks. You have open primaries in this state. You allow your enemies to choose your leaders. The Republican Party is a private organization, right? It's a private organization. If you're in the golf club, do you let the tennis club people vote for your president? If you're a Baptist, do you let the Methodists choose your pastor? So why do you allow the Democrats and even the communists to come into your primaries and vote for the weakest, wettest Republican they can? And they do it all the time, folks. That's how Lindsey Graham is still a senator from South Carolina, though the conservative base despises him. The Republican leadership loves open primaries because that means they can keep on putting up moderates and they rely on their Democrat friends to come and help elect them. So every one of you, is there a slight gap here between the conservative constitutional base and some of your representatives?
Oh, yeah.
Is there a little bit of a gap there? Why is that? Because you allow the Democrats to come in and say there might be 4 people in the primary. You got a real hardcore conservative like Kurt Knisley. You got a couple of moderates, and you got a really weak, wet Republican. 4 of them in the race. Who are the Democrats going to come and vote for? They're going to come into your primary and vote for the weakest Republican you can find. This is the biggest problem we have in this country because the base is getting more conservative and more constitutionalist and more powerful every single day, but we have this layer of weak representatives who let us down every time because they're more worried about the 10% of Democrats who vote for them than the 90% of Republicans who do. If you close your primaries, folks, and you will have, there's going to be a battle, but you've got to put it on your agenda because if you close your primaries, you'll elect a lot more Ron DeSantis's and a lot less whoever your governor is now. I know his name, so I don't want to mention it before I come. So, look, this is where we're at. We're in a revolution. We may lose this country. I know what you folk do. You are people who've been out there every day, writing out checks, running miles around the state, going to meetings, putting up yard signs, knocking on doors, phone banking, year after year after year. Tell me why you do it. This is why I think you do it. I think you do it because you love your country and you love your children. Is that why you do it, folks? Well, I know what you put up with. I know the ingratitude you get from some of your representatives. I know how hard this is. I've done it myself in my own country. But I'm asking you to double down, folks, because we have a better chance now to turn this party and turn this country and turn this nation around than at any time in our history. I go all around this country, folks. There are groups springing up everywhere. There are people getting involved in the conservative movement, Moms for Liberty. They're fired up by the education of their children. They're getting involved in school board races. It is like the Tea Party all over again, but a much younger demographic. It's extremely exciting to see. In the RNC now, 70% of the RNC are either MAGA people or Tea Party people. It has never been so high, ever. But we still have this layer of rhinos that have to go. Because the only way forward is a grassroots conservative movement that values social conservative issues, that values the Constitution, that puts America first, American jobs first, that looks to the interests of the grassroots people, not the corporates, not the left-wing pressure groups, but the ordinary Americans. Trump did us a huge favour, folks, because he set the bar very high. Now we know what it's like to have a president that actually loves the country and is willing to fight for the country. And we are never going to accept anything less again. And that has got to be right through, from school board, county commission, all over. We're going to be saved by the conservative governments. We're going to be saved by the constitutional sheriffs. We're going to be saved by the sound school boards. In this state, in Indiana, you can elect your school board, and your school board can determine the curriculum. Not the superintendent, the school board. So take over a school board. Throw out the whole curriculum. Put a Hillsdale College or a homeschool curriculum in place, and then you get the real estate agents to fund your campaigns, because they're going to make so much money selling houses to all the people wanting to move into your district. But this will reverberate around the country. The conservative, the constitutional county in Kosciuszko County is being watched all over the country, folks. Exciting things are happening in Indiana, and believe me, they are being watched all around the country. So I'm saying to you folks, it ain't easy. I know it ain't easy. But it wasn't easy for your founding fathers either, armed with squirrel rifles up against the world's greatest military empire. It wasn't easy for your grandfathers out in the Pacific battling malaria and the Japanese. It wasn't easy for your uncles, 18-year-old uncles, straight off a farm, storming the beaches at Normandy, fighting in the Battle of the Bulge. It wasn't easy for them too. But are you grateful for what they did? Amen. So I just want to say, it ain't easy. You are a minority. But when did God ever raise up a large army to smite another large army? It was always David versus Goliath, Gideon's army versus the horde. It was always your little band of revolutionaries versus the British army. That's what's always made the difference. Because the greatest victories come from the darkest times. Because that is the time when people get off the fence and decide whether they are for good or they are for evil. That is the time, that is our time now, folks. We are for good or we are for evil. If we choose good, we may suffer for it. But all of us will earn the right to look our children in the eye and tell them we did everything we possibly could for them. And when we are held to account, to stand tall before our God and proud that we did what we could to save this great nation that He gave us. So I am so grateful to be here. Please come and see me over here. I'm so proud to be amongst you. I'm looking forward to seeing the great candidates you have on offer. There is a spirit here that will spread across this country. Proud to be amongst you, and I wish you every good fortune in the battles ahead. Thank you so much.